Welcome back, everyone, to the GDFL podcast with your host, Andrew Korn. This week, I will have Trevor joining me on the show. Say hi to the world, Trevor.
Hello, world. I'm Trevor. In case you didn't know, I think it might be one person, maybe Mr. Sokol, but everyone else should know me from my Michigan State days.
All right. Thank you, Trevor. I apologize for last week. I was on vacation last week. I was camping in New York, Vermont, New Hampshire for the past like 10 days or so. Got COVID on my trip, so I've been a little sick since, but I'm here and recording the podcast now. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So then we have a quick recap of what's gone on the last 2 weeks. There's nothing that like was too crazy going on in the matchups. Uh,
You know what? I am real surprised at how well Ryan has done so far this year. That's something that's really surprised me. It's not just small wins. I mean, we're talking 140 points these
mhm,
past couple weeks, and people were saying before the season, is he tanking? Is he tanking? And obviously not. 5-1 record. The other surprise this past week is Corn, yourself and Ashton. What a horrible matchup. Like that should be a matchup for Logan and I to have, not you and Ashton. So those were a couple big surprises. I was real surprised to see that be a very low scoring matchup. And I'd be curious to see outside of, toilet bowl matchups, how that ranks all time in this league and lowest total
mhm.
points combined between a matchup.
Yeah, that was something I was going to bring up. I have no idea where it ranks all time. I mean, that has to be the lowest points in a win ever, and I don't think it can be particularly close. I mean, I think there's been like usually at least 100 is the score of the winner.
Yeah.
And to be at like Stun was at 77. Like, yeah, there was so last year in the first round of the playoffs, my team would have put up like 60 points if we would have had if I would have not had my bye. So I mean, I don't know. I usually build my teams around build or boom bust players, and if they all bust the same week, it makes for a pretty rough week. I mean, Brees Hall kind of saved it for me at the end, but I was at 49 points going into Monday Night Football this past week, so could have been.
That is pretty brutal. And if I remember correctly from when my team was actually good in our inaugural year of this league, I faced Jake in the semifinal, and I'm pretty sure he won with less than 100 points. I think it was decided by like a point.
Yeah,
And man, that was a lucky win. And then I ended up scoring like 180 points the next week. So if I had only put up 100 points, I'd be a champion, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Got to deal with what's your hand that's dealt.
yep. Oh, absolutely. No, someone else I want to shout out. So I think because we do the weekly winner gets a $10 payout. Chaz
Yeah.
has been the weekly winner 3 times so far this year.
Wow. That is impressive. Quietly quietly putting together a good year. I mean, there's quite a few contenders this year. I mean, at the top that I really think could make a run for kind of the finals. And there's also some teams that are really any team that's Sokol or above on the standings we see here, I think at least has a shot. I
Mhm,
mean, it's really a two dog race for last right now between Logan and I. Um, I think I'm better prepared to tank given my current max points for assets, but you never know. Logan could surprise people with how much he sucks. So
mhm.
that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Yeah, I don't have it up on this screen just because I didn't have time to fully prepare. But yeah, Sokol actually is fairly close in the lowest max points for. I mean, he's still like a very distant third from you two, but
Yeah.
like, he's still, if he really wanted to, probably could tank his way down. But again, that would probably it require a lot more trades than. I mean, you've already made a handful of trades that have started to lower it.
That was really my goal. And I mean, I kind of did some analysis over the past week and looked at some other bottom teams. Unless there's a really enticing offer, I don't see how I'm gonna lose the max points for battle at this point, the way I've structured my team, especially since the others mainly have two quarterbacks. So unless another team trades away one of their quarterbacks and goes one QB, I may be forced to make some trades. But at where it stands, the way I structured my team, I am fairly confident I can clinch Ashton Genty next year.
Mhm. There we go. Yeah, I think Logan, if he really wanted to, could sell off a few of like James Conner or Mari Cooper. Like he still has a few like vet pieces he could sell off, like Josh Jacobs maybe, and start to challenge you. But no, I'm with you. I think it's currently constructed. You're there. And I really do think Ryan was trying to tank at the start of the season, but then like he's just kept winning and just like his players have just found ways to score points and get just enough points to win. So
Yeah.
Ryan's jumped out to a 5-1 record, and I think
I
he
mean, you don't tank with a 5-1 record at
no
all.
no,
No.
I think after he started 3-1 or 4-1, it was I mean that ship's kind of sailed now. And Logan sold off AJ Brown, which we'll get to in a second.
Yep.
Like that might be something like he doesn't Ryan really has would have had a harder time competing for the 101 after that trade as well. And Logan or Ryan has Logan's pick,
Yeah.
so he doesn't necessarily need to tank his own team now to try and get a high pick either.
Makes sense.
Yeah, one team I like Levi being and falling to ninth at 2-4. I mean, he was 5-1 against the median currently, so he's just
Oh, wow.
been a victim of some bad luck. And Beans just jumped up to 3-3 and just quietly moved into the playoff picture for the time being as well. And some
Yeah.
of that, like Josh Downs and Chase Brown, have been pretty good the last few weeks. McLaurin and Shaheed have been great so far this year.
Yeah. I mean,
Beans is,
unfortunately, Shaheed might have season-ending meniscus surgery. We'll see. He just
mhm.
came out today, so we'll see on that. But that could be rough for Mr. Beans.
Yeah, no, like you said though, I mean, if you look, there's three teams that are 5-1 right now. I'm sitting there at 4-2. But then there's six teams that are all within a game of the last playoff spot right now, and I'll definitely I think could make a run.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how kind of these bye week matchups shape up. Some team could get lucky and have an easy win because some of the top players are on buys for the opposing team, and some team could really vault themselves into a position. But I mean, in 3, 4 weeks here, we're going to see probably a lot of heavy buyers, and maybe Logan and myself as potentially the only sellers. I don't know how much there will be to buy if the standings are this tight later on in the year.
No, I've thought that too. Is like I've mentioned it on other shows, but like you're really not having that much left to sell. That would be like putting people starting lineups at this point. Like you have Pacheco who could be coming back, like Ramondre.
Yeah.
But
The way I kind of thought about this too is this team, is this person bona fide going to be a starter next year? And
mhm,
I think Pacheco will still be a starter next year. So I hesitate to sell him because I don't envision this self as a multi-year tank. I think with 2 first round picks next year, especially, I mean, love Levi, but I mean, if his team were to miss the playoffs, that would benefit me greatly. So, I mean, if I get 2 top 5 picks and sell off some of the second round, third picks for some rental players, I put myself right back into the playoff picks.
mhm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see a position where it's only a 1-year tank for you. Again, if you have the 101, you can split that into multiple assets. Like you'll have a lot of flexibility with all the draft picks you have to build your team how you want after the season. It's just going to be again, it's weird because you're like having a team that's just like you're trying to lose and trying not to do well. It's just like counterintuitive to how fantasy football usually works. So it's always
Yeah,
fascinating to me when again teams have to do this sometimes where you just bite the bullet and you'll take your loss this year to hopefully set yourself up well for the future.
exactly.
All right, so we have a few trades that have happened since the last show. This is the biggest one. So this was AJ Brown for Zach Charbonnet and 2 firsts from Levi. Again, this is Logan signaling the white flag of, hey, this team's not a contender and I'm willing to move on. Then, yeah,
Yeah,
AJ Brown's a pretty big receiver to move off of. I mean, I think he's a top eight-ish receiver.
it is interesting because I mean, I don't know exactly how old AJ Brown is off the top of
He's
my head.
27.
So he's at the more tail end of a wide receiver's peak as far as age goes. I mean, obviously there are exceptions. Some wide receivers produce well into their early 30s, and AJ Brown could easily do that. But I mean, we're probably talking 2 to 3 more years of elite production. So I think the cost is justified. I don't see this as a bad trade for either side. I mean, if Levi somehow falters and then was forced to sell some of his assets and has a bad team in a couple of years, this could really benefit Logan, 2, 3 years from now. Um, Charbonnet, I mean, K9 seems like the absolute dominant person in Seattle. If Charbonnet finds himself somewhere else, if Seattle were to move on from Charbonnet on a trade, for a team that really needs a running back, like, I mean, let's be real, Charbonnet would be the starter in a couple teams right now, especially like Dallas Cowboys. So there's a scenario where Charbonnet helps Logan in the future, but I feel like that's more of just a throw in.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I value Charbonnet as about a second, so I think this trade was two first and a second for AJ Brown, which I think is more than fair. And then, like you mentioned, if Levi, I mean, there's always a chance you could be bad. Fantasy football is so random; you just like never know what happens in the future. But
Yeah.
Levi has a pretty young team, and like it's already been pretty successful, even if the record doesn't show it. So
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, I'm not going to project out picks 2 and 3 years from now just because straight up have no idea what's going to happen. But I
Yeah.
mean, AJ Brown's a great piece to have. There's not many receivers that score as many points as him. So,
That's true. That's true.
all right, moving on. We have a few smaller scale trades that you made. So you sold off Jacoby Myers to Sokol in a fourth for 2/3, and then traded away Dalton Schultz for Jaleel McLaughlin.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts on this one. We'll start on the big one. Jacoby Myers, he's older. This is probably his last big season. Although I gotta say, Sokol probably wins the trade right now with the Devontae Adams trade. I
Mhm.
probably should have held on a little bit longer, and Jacoby Myers' trade value is probably a little bit higher than it was a couple weeks ago. Um, we'll see. I mean, that being said, I'm fine with building up draft picks. I feel like Jacoby Myers could be a high scorer the rest of the year. And if this is the difference in max points for between Ashton Genty and who's ever number two, then so be it. So
Mhm.
that's the way I look at it. Jaleel McLaughlin and Dalton Schultz, I mean, it's basically backup for backup. I mean, Dalton Schultz really is kind of insurance for Mark.
I think he was started
I
for Mark.
will he's been nah, and I mean I have Dalton Kincaid and he's gonna be
Mhm.
my tight end for hopefully 10 more years. So I was fine to move on from Schultz. I had so many draft picks. I didn't want any more third rounders because then I would just have the entire third round next year. So I decided to take a little gamble on McLaughlin. I think that Denver moves on from Williams after this year. I could easily see them drafting a running back, but if they don't, I can see a scenario where McLaughlin ends up being a starter.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I like both of these for both sides. I mean, for Sokol, I mean, I know he really likes having receivers and like giving up 2/3 and getting a fourth back. I think again, he could be the Raiders. He's probably the Raiders wide receiver one rest of the season. Very good value. I mean, Jacoby Myers has always been like a wide receiver 3, 4 type and like
Yeah,
still valuable for fantasy. It's just like probably not gonna put up superstar production, but still some production. And again, like you said, if that's the difference between you getting 1 and 2, like I think that's totally worth it just to like have the just to again lower your points. And then
yeah,
yeah, Dalton Schultz I think is starting for Mark right now with the way Mark Andrews has been playing this year. Needed to do something at the tight end position. With Nico Collins out right now too, Schultz's value increased a lot, I think.
yeah,
And then yeah, McLaughlin's a nice little piece to have. I mean, I don't he's someone where like I don't know, A chain very light is kind of how I view McLaughlin.
yeah,
He's on a much worse team, so it's kind of hard to say like what that role will be in the future until the Broncos get better. But I mean, I definitely think there's some upside ceiling there with him.
yep.
So here's a couple trades that happened Monday at around 7:30 p.m. Uh, so just to lay the picture out for everyone. So me, Levi, and Logan were all playing Fortnite together Monday night. And right before I signed on to Fortnite, I saw James Cook was ruled out. And so the three of us were on Fortnite talking about like, okay, what's Levi going to be able to do this week? Because he was only down half a point to Beans, and so he literally needed a catch from someone to win his matchup.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, so Levi was sent this trade to Logan, and which was accepted. And then like they had agreed like so I guess to put more back sports story into it, uh, you can't drop players after a game's been played already.
Okay.
So then, because Levi couldn't drop anyone, he couldn't. He when he after he acquired Tyler Conklin, he was over the player limit. Being
Ah,
over the player limit, you can't change your lineup. So then Levi had to trade away someone who was either on a bye or playing in the game that Monday night. So the only players he could trade away were Aaron Jones, Rashi Rice, Xavier Worthy, and James Cook because he hadn't played yet. So Levi was going to have to trade away either Aaron Jones or like a rather core piece to his team, which makes it kind of hard for him to make a trade in the moment if he wanted to like go for that half point and go for the win.
yeah,
So Levi and Logan had agreed to if Levi could put Tyler Conklin in his lineup, then he would. But otherwise, Logan did agree that he would trade him back if I couldn't. I did make it,
interesting.
yeah, made it very clear that I'm not going to be the one to, it's like on both of their accords to make the trade back.
Yeah,
Because like that is a trade that was accepted. Like if you guys want to trade back, that's on you. That's not anything that I'm going to enforce. So
yeah,
that's kind of how my stance was on it. But
interesting.
so that's what led to this trade of Aaron Jones for Mike Williams and then a swap of picks. I gave up a second for Aaron Jones and then gave up Mike Williams as well, who Levi needed to start that night. And then, unfortunately for Levi, Mike Williams dropped two passes, which catching either of them would have given him the win. So that was a tough watching Monday Night Football because like I was really rooting for Levi to win. Like I was hoping this was going to work out for him. I mean,
Oh man.
I get Aaron Jones out of it, and I kind of needed an extra body with Nico Collins' injury and Travis Etienne's injury slash him just being a massive bust right now.
Yeah,
So like I still needed another piece to throw in my lineup for the future, which I was a okay with paying this price for it. But that's like the backstory of why Levi made these trades was he was only down half a point, and he was extremely limited in what he could move on from in order to get a trade done.
that makes sense. It's interesting. And I mean, Mike Williams is now on the trading block for the Jets, from what I've
Mhm.
heard this week as well. So might find himself on a team that needs some wide receiver help. Could definitely see him ending up on the Saints. I
Mhm.
believe Bub Means is now the starter for Thursday for the Saints. So they're in desperate need of some wide receiver depth in that room.
Mhm. Yeah, who knows where if Mike Williams does get traded. I mean, he's clearly in Aaron Rodgers' doghouse now after
Yeah, and I
well, called
mean,
out after the game, but
Jets have. I mean, if they're running three wide receiver sleds, it's clearly going to be Lazard, Adams, and Wilson.
yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. So that's a recap of all the trades from the past 2 weeks. We have a look at some of the upcoming matchups. So we have me versus Sokol, which is a pretty long-standing rivalry over the years. Sokol's the person I've been playing fantasy football off the longest. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one. That's also a playoff rematch from last year's semis. We got Shrew and Stun, which is a pretty big rivalry between the two. We also have Levi and Jake, another rather big rivalry. I mean, Beans and Logan, I think both rate each other ones in that survey.
yep,
And then you got you and Mark, and then Chaz and Ryan. So like, I mean, I'm not gonna like dub this as rivalry week, but it's pretty damn close based on the matchups that we have.
yeah.
Chaz and Ryan, I think, are first and second right now. So
We'll see. I mean, Mark has to be skipping with joy facing me this week when he's 3-3 to go to that 4-3 mark. You never know what could happen though. I mean, obviously, Neighbors is I saw he's likely to clear concussion protocol, so I get him back next week. So we'll see. I mean, probably Mark wins, but hey, I do have a win this year. I was hoping I wouldn't get skunked on
yep,
the year. That was my goal. Get
yep.
at least a win.
Everyone has at least one. I
Yeah.
think the matchup to really watch is this matchup between Jake and Levi. They're both sitting at 2-4.
Yeah.
Swapping the 2-5 for either of them, I think both of them absolutely could make the playoffs. But if either of them fall at 2-5, it might be a pretty big uphill battle to get into the playoffs after that.
That's a good point. And I mean, I haven't looked at buys or anything to see who set lineups, but Logan being heavily favored at 1-5 is also interesting.
Yeah, I would have to. I think some of that is. I mean, I'm not going to read too much into projections quite yet because I think Beans has Justin Fields in the starting lineup who might get benched, and then like I'm not
Yeah.
sure what exactly has been updated from when I pulled this because I pulled this last night.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
but yeah, Logan. I mean, I can't imagine Beans' projection of 80 is completely accurate if he has Fields in there still. So that's at least like 12 points from Levis for a projection that would make it at least a little bit closer.
Yeah.
All right, this is the segment I really wanted to do, though, which was as soon as I came up with the idea for a podcast and you volunteered, Trevor, I wanted to do this. So,
Yes.
what Trevor and I did was we did a backyard baseball matchmaker. So, backyard baseball is a game from our childhood. I don't know who's played it, but it's just like a point and click game you can play on your computer. And there's like 30 kids in the backyard baseball universe, and they have other spin-off games too. But Trevor and I used to go to I think it was Supply Chain Management
Yeah,
303.
supply chain 303, baby.
Yeah, we used to go to it and just like sit next to each other and play backyard baseball. But there was a 600-person lecture. I think only 60 people showed up. Trevor and I were two of them, and we would just go and play backyard baseball and not pay attention. This is a game that both of us have loved some from our childhoods. And as soon as like I was thinking of ideas for segments, I was like, Trevor, we're gonna like assign everyone a backyard baseball character and just
Yeah,
like talk about like thought processes behind it. So
absolutely.
yeah, I was excited about this. I know you were too. So we actually only agreed on one person total.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah.
Interesting.
So I want you to take a guess on who that one person was.
That's a good. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I could be wrong. Amir Khan for Ashton.
Okay. I think that is one I considered for Ashton, but it's not what I went with.
Okay.
So the one we agreed on was Jake. We both agreed of Jake being Marky DuBois. So for those of you who don't know backyard baseball, Marky DuBois is kind of like the hillbilly kid.
Yeah.
He wears overalls and he's barefoot all the time. And so that's kind of why I picked him for Jake is like I've seen Jake wear overalls enough times and Jake's always barefoot. Like there's just something about Marquis Du Bois' spirit that I think lives within Jake.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say my reasoning. Sometimes in the game, you don't know what the fuck's gonna come out of Marky's mouth, and you don't know what the fuck's gonna come out of Jake's mouth. So that was my reasoning.
I love it. I love it. So the next two I'm gonna do together just because I thought it was fascinating. So for myself, I picked Dmitry Petrovich and you picked Jorge Garcia for me.
Yep.
And then for you, you picked Jorge Garcia for me and Dmitry Petrovic for yourself. So we both went with the two nerds. We both wanted to be Dmitry Petrovic, though, because I mean, I think
Yeah,
we both agree he's the better of the nerds. I think that's why
exactly.
we picked him for ourselves. And clearly, the reason why the other one was picked for each other was Dimitri and Jorge.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? Nerdy sports dude loves their stats. That's was my thought process for picking Jorge for you and
Mm-hmm.
Dimitri for myself. So
Yep. No, I saw that when you had sent me that. It's like, oh, great. Like, I had a feeling that was going to happen too. It was like we both want to be Dimitri. Just yeah, I mean, yeah, these were the two nerds. Like clearly we both saw something in ourselves and we're on the same page there. I did think with your recent hip surgery, think about picking Kenny Kawaguchi for
Oh,
you.
that was what I was considering for myself as well. So,
Mhm.
but that was in the thought process.
Yeah, especially after I saw that, I think it was on like your Instagram story of like you in the wheelchair at the Tigers game. It's just
Yeah,
like, man, yeah, this
couldn't
is
miss
totally
those for the
Kenny right
world.
now.
Wheelchair and all.
Hmm. Yeah. Anyway, these were two of my like. After I saw this, I really laughed out loud because it's like we both have our favorite of the two nerds. And I mean,
Yes.
Dimitri was just the better player in the game.
Oh yeah, agreed.
So up next we have Ryan. For Ryan, I picked Sally Dobbs. So Sally Dobbs is the older sister in the backyard universe. That's kind of why I picked her for Ryan was like Ryan has that big brother energy. She has that big sister
Yeah.
energy. And she's also fairly tall too compared to some of the other characters. And
Yeah,
you picked
I
Billie
picked
Jean
Billie Jean
Blackwood.
Blackwood because honestly, if both of them turned sideways, meaning Billie Jean and Ryan, they'd be invisible. So both kind of tall, lanky, um, give off that friendly vibe energy as well. So that's why I picked that for Ryan.
No, it's interesting. We both picked two different women for Ryan too. Not sure what that says about Ryan, but
Yep.
then moving on to Beans. So for the reason why I picked Sally Dobbs for Ryan, I picked Ronnie Dobbs for Beans. Again, Beans has that little brother energy. Ronnie Dobbs is the little brother. I thought it was pretty fitting for me to pick the two of them. And then you had
Yeah.
picked Pete Wheeler for Beans.
Yeah. So I haven't met Beans very often, only one golf outing, but in my limited experience, I'm like, this guy kind of spaces out. Sometimes I don't know if it's all up there a little bit, and kind of the same with Pete Wheeler, but he's fast and good. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I had a really hard time wanting to give. So Pete Wheeler is my personal favorite from the backyard games. So I had a really hard time of wanting to give Pete Wheeler out to anyone. So like I just couldn't get myself to do it. I think there's a lot of, I mean, just from this group of friends being a lot of frisbee players, like I feel like there's a lot of people who could have fit Pete Wheeler too.
Yeah.
But just like my own personal feelings is like I love Pete Wheeler. He's like always the first person I pick on all
Oh
my
yeah,
teams.
lead off guy, huge lead off
Yep.
guy in
Leadoff
back.
guy, put him in center, put him in the outfield, cover some
Yeah.
space. I love myself some Pete Wheeler. So up next we have Sokol. So for Sokol, I picked Mikey Thomas. So Mikey Thomas has that power, and I feel like Sokol just has that power. Like I mentioned this before, like he's an all-state wrestler in high school, bigger guy, and like Mikey Thomas just like has that power, which I think encapsulates him.
Yeah.
And you picked Ronnie Dobbs.
I don't know Jake, so I just picked someone that nobody really knows about in backyard baseball. Like people forget Ronnie Dobbs even exists. I would imagine he's one of the least picked people in backyard baseball. Nothing against Jake himself, but I mean I feel like he's kind of soft spoken, doesn't really talk too much in the chat, so that's kind of why I picked Ronnie for this.
Mhm. Oh no, that's absolutely fair. So actually, I saw a Reddit thread about like who are the like least known backyard baseball characters, and Lisa Crockett was actually the top comment and top like
Oh,
about it on the thread. So like
interesting.
that's interesting that you brought that up. I think Ronnie Dobbs was also on that list. Like Gretchen Hasselhoff was on there
Yeah.
too. There was like Annie Frazier, I think, was mentioned too.
Although Backyard Baseball 2005, Frazier Fields, beautiful venue.
Okay, I don't think I ever played 2005. Or wait, was that one on PS2? Actually,
It
I
was
think I
on
did play on that
PC
one.
and
Yeah,
PS2.
I I had it on PS2. I actually did play that one. I just had to know that was 2005. Up next, we have Chaz. So for Chaz, I picked Tony Del Vecchio, and you picked Mikey Thomas. So I picked Tony Del Vecchio just because I don't know. I feel like Chaz just like he has that swagger to him. I feel like Tony Del Vecchio just like has some swagger to him, and then just like
Yeah.
not like he's not like great at anything, but he's like good at everything. And I feel like that just like encapsulates who I think Chaz is. Just like he's just good. Like he always has a good team. Like I thought like going into the year that his team was going to be like around fourth or fifth. Currently in first, and I think if I had to change my favorites now to win, he's in first without CMC. Probably be my favorite to win the league right now. But Tony Delvecchio is just always solid, and Chaz is just really solid.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple for Chaz. Mikey Thomas says if you click on his screen, I hit dingers. This team has been hitting dingers all year. Top of the league, points for. Enough said. Mikey's got the power. Chaz has got the power.
All right. Up next, we have Logan. So for Logan, I picked Ernie Steele, and you picked Keisha Phillips. So I picked Ernie Steele because Ernie Steele, I mean, Steele Stadium has a pool in the backyard, and Logan's like childhood home had a pool. Ernie Steele is also a pretty big basketball kid, if I remember correctly. And so, like, he always wears like the high socks with the high top shoes. And like, Logan's pretty big into basketball shoes. Kind of like my reasoning for picking Ernie Steele for Logan. He's also Ernie Steele's, I'm pretty sure, the tallest kid in backyard sports, too.
Yeah.
And you pick Keisha Phillips.
Yeah, so I picked Keisha Phillips. Keisha is giant, big, and loud, and Logan can be all three of those things. So that's why I picked it for Logan. Logan does a lot of things with a lot of power, which credit to him.
Hmm.
And Keisha is a very powerful. I don't know how much finesse there is to either of their game. So that's how I picked Logan for and came up with Keisha
Yeah,
for.
that's totally fair. Keisha Phillips is again really good in the backyard games. And so like I had a really hard time picking anyone who was like really good. Like I didn't
Yeah.
give anyone Ahmed Khan, I didn't have one Pete Wheeler, Keisha Phillips.
I could not bring myself to give out Pablo Sanchez. I don't know what you picked in later slides, but I was like, there's no one worthy of the GOAT in this thing.
We'll have to see. So up next we have Stun. So for Stun, you picked Amir Khan and I picked Ashley Weber. So I picked Ashley Weber because she plays tennis and like is one of the tennis girls. And then just like, well, Stun plays tennis. His name starts with Ash.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me. And then you went with Amir Khan.
He's just like that low-key vibe dude that's just like, hey man, what's going on? Like how are things doing? He's not as boisterous as like Ahmed Khan. He kind of keeps a lower key profile, and I kind of feel it encapsulates Ashton's personality. So that's why I went with Amir Khan on this one.
No, Amir Khan was someone I was considering for Stun, so I mean I get it. But I gave Amir Khan to Mark for very similar reasons. Not very loud, but just like seems steady. And then just like also I feel like Mark kind of looks like Amir Khan more than Stun does too. Again, just like my own personal thoughts. May or may not be true.
Yeah. And I mean I went similar like Reese low-key guy seems like a good dude. Not great, not bad. That's why I went with Mark. So
Mhm.
went with Reese Worthington.
Yep. But I gave Reese Worthington to Levi. And
Oh wow.
so I thought of, yeah, Reese Worthington's a tiny man and Levi's a tiny man. So I had to give Levi, who I think Reese was probably the smallest male in the backyard sports universe. But yeah, that's really the only reason why I gave him to Levi was he's a tiny man and they're both tiny men. And you picked
Um,
Lisa Crockett.
yeah, honestly, if you look at Lisa and Levi next to face, they kind of look like siblings. Not gonna lie, with the glasses. So um that's why I picked it. I'm like, man, that's one Levi ass looking motherfucker in Lisa Crockett. So that's why I chose Lisa for Levi. And plus they both start with an L.
Yeah, there we go. No, I'm like looking at her photo now. It's like, oh, my hair's about that long and I have glasses. That definitely could have been me too if we're going those
You
type of
were
images. But
that was my second choice for you, FYI, was Lisa
okay.
Crockett.
So then we have Shrew, who I think's the last one here. For Shrew, I picked Kimmy Ekman, and then you picked Luann Louis.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I picked Kimmy Ekman because she's kind of the worst, and so is Shrew.
I
That's my only
picked
reasoning.
I picked Luann Louis because small can be good, but also Luann Louis can cry a lot, and I think just Shrew just cries a lot in the chat. And honestly, crybaby mentality with both. I
Mhm.
would not be surprised if Shrew sleeps with a teddy bear too.
Oh, that's good. No, Luann Louis is also pretty fast, so like I figured that might have like influenced some of your rankings too, because like Shrew
He
is pretty
says he would
quick.
beat anyone to the cone, and I think Luann Louis would say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shrew would beat all of us in a race. I mean, he's certainly beating me in a race, and I mean,
I mean, I think an 85-year-old's going to beat any me in a race right now with my hip situation. So
no, fair enough. All right, I think Shrew was the last one. Yep, looks like he was. Well, thank you for joining the show, Trevor. It's been a blast having you on. I'm
absolutely
fucking with Zeke a
honored to
lot
be
right
here.
now. Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share before we end this thing?
Um, just hoping everyone has fun the rest of the season, except for Jake Pruitt because he gave me a one. So I hope he doesn't have fun and everyone else does.
All right. Well, thank you, Trevor. Thank you for shouting out Jake. So you give you a little fuck you to Jake. I don't really have anything to say to close my
I
thoughts
want my
out.
R back. That's my closing
Yeah.
statement.
You want your R back? I thought you have your R.
No,
Oh,
I
so you,
want my T. No, I want my T
I was
back.
gonna say you don't have your T. I was gonna say I didn't think you were ever forever. You would be if you didn't win a game this year, but
Yeah, I want my T back. I'm coming back for my T in 2026. That's my mantra.
all right, coming back for the T in 2026. So with that, this was your commissioner Andrew Korn, and we are signing off.